The moment I met David, there was magic in his soul and in his being. He has such a zest for life and learning. And anybody who knows David R. Boxley knows that he's a serious Superman fan. And I keep telling myself, you know, I love Marvel Comics, I love Superman, but I think that we need real life heroes today. And I would like to introduce you to my real life hero, David R. Boxley, who is such... He's committed his life to learning and carrying on and teaching the Ts'msyen language of Metlakatla. He committed himself as a young boy to mastering the art, and he is one of the most exquisite, beautiful human beings I have ever had the privilege of working with. David R. Boxley.
Well, after that, I don't know what to do. Hatituusku will sit at me and to allow to get them. Man asu dus bereid kijk de doels en ja wat het My name is David Robert Boxley from Metlakatla, Alaska. I belong to the Wolf clan. Ts'msyen. My father is David Albert Boxley. My great-grandfather was Albert Bolton. I live in Metlakatla now. I was a little boy when I started carving, and I have grown up with a front row seat to the resurgence of Ts'msyen culture. I'd like to start tonight to talk about the print that I did for Stonington's 40th anniversary, just so that I can get that out of the way. And I wanted to explain the design. When I was, as Becky mentioned, I remember being 7 or 8 years old and going into Stonington back when it was down on the other end of First Avenue, down in Belltown, which was not as nice as Belltown is today. A couple blocks down the street there were some theaters, if anyone remembers that. Anyway. And I remember going in and seeing just incredible art. I've had an amazing opportunity to be immersed in this life since I was a little boy. So this design honors, it's called Hooked Up, the artist. Hooked up in my language doesn't literally mean artist, it means someone who's always creating. This was, in my mind, a tribute to all the folks who have made Stonington what it is, made our modern Northwest Coast art movement what it is over the last 50, 60 years. The central figure is an artist. It's not male or female. It's just maybe the spirit of the artist. The yellow field on the left-hand side has a basketry design to recognize all the amazing weavers and textile artists. The blue ultra-primary design is meant to give a nod to modern materials like glass and metal. If you look at I didn't put a hand, like a 5-fingered hand, onto the artist. Chilkat weavers have a taboo about weaving hands into robes, so I wanted to even acknowledge them in this case, so it has a more animalistic hand, but you'll notice that the fingers are like paintbrushes going down the side of the design, and the ovoid of the head extends out, and where it goes into the blue field, it reminds me anyway of an adze. hitting a piece of wood. So I was very proud to do this. I want to thank the gallery, Becky and everyone for having me do this. It means a lot to me to get to represent not only this anniversary, but to do something that acknowledges all of my fellow artists. And, you know, art is just so important, not only to our culture, but to the world. And us artists don't ever tend to get the focus. Usually it's the work and not us. And I wanted a design that gave a nod to the artists themselves. Okay. These are my great-grandparents, Albert and Dora Bolton. Dora was a basket weaver. Albert, in his youth, learned to carve canoes from his father. They were both born in the 1890s. And my great-grandmother died 9 months before I was born, and I knew my great-grandfather till I was 10. So I heard, he passed away when I was 10. So I heard the language growing up. They raised my father. About a year after I was born, my father hosted the very first pot match ever in our community. We were a Christian mission and had relocated from Canada, and our culture had been put away. So for his grandmother's memorial, he carved the first totem pole ever in our community and hosted a pot match. He received the name Shpoavia, which is what I used to introduce him earlier. It means first pot match. And that's us. We didn't have regalia. None of that had come back for us yet. I started carving at 6 years old. I have a very clear memory of hacking away at a piece of alder or red cedar. That flashed image in my mind, and I was not hitting the same place twice. I've loved art. My parents could leave me alone for hours in a room with paper and crayons at 2 or 3 years old, and I could satisfy myself for hours. I've always known I wanted to be an artist. For a while I wanted to draw comic books. I thought for a while I was going to go into illustration. I almost applied to be a Disney Imagineer when I was 18. And around that same time, when I was 6 years old, I started being able to travel with my dad to help him raise totem poles around the country. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a little boombox here because there was just the two of us. Dance groups weren't really a thing for us at that time, and we would dance to those cassette tapes. At 13, I started creating artwork for galleries. I sold my first prints. I'll never forget walking into the Legacy, actually, with Mardana, and basically, Dad was like, "Here's my son. Buy his stuff." Thankfully, I've reached a point where my work speaks for itself. My dad instilled in me the passion not only for our culture and art, but the teachings that we needed to go back and learn from the old masters. There was a broken line, and we had to go study in museums. And if you really look at my work, there is, even though I do have a style, I guess, that I've developed, there is a true tie back to the old style. And it's pieces like these that I've spent hours and hours and hours studying, particularly the book, Transforming Image. There's photographs in there that if you understand how to put form line together and you study those old pieces, they can really open your mind to what's possible with this art form. This is my dad, my brother, and I studying at the Burt Museum. And this is a piece of my father's. Again, that classical style is something that I was brought up with and loved very much. This is a print of mine. We're taught, my people, are taught to not talk about yourself. So I'm terribly uncomfortable, and I'm doing this for you. Okay. This a print of mine that came out just in my late teens. And stylistically, I was doing what I thought was formline. And then that book came out, Transforming Image. And I started studying and studying and studying. And my work after changed dramatically. I'm so fortunate to have had my father teaching me. You know, he was just always there, and I don't remember that we ever sat down. I'll talk about this in a second. That we ever sat down and said, okay, this is the project we're going to do, and we're going to work our way through it. It was kind of this osmosis experience throughout my entire childhood. I'm very lucky for that. Yeah, I'm a big Superman fan. But I use this image when I teach, and I talk about that you can do anything with formline once you learn the rules. There is a strict structure to how and why it works, but once you learn all that strict how and why, the field opens up in front of you, and it's truly endless. I went in 2009. I asked Robert Davidson if I could come and work with him. And he very graciously took me on with 2 questions. How do you feel about doing high to art? I said, I don't care. You've got tricks that I want to learn. And he said, what's your dad going to say? And I knew that my dad would be very proud, and he was. This was the first piece I did while working for Robert. And I learned a lot. In the first week, I learned 5 or 6 things that have changed the way I approach the art completely, and learned a lot of skills, not just about the approach to the work, but the approach to life that I appreciate very much. This is a panel that my father and brother and I collaborated on. It's in the Portland Art Museum. I'm very proud of this one. This design, see now, this is based off of that bowl that my dad and brother and I were sitting in front of earlier in the Burke Museum, and I've just turned it circular. I want to make sure that I don't take credit totally for the design because it's not quite originally mine, but I've added some things. And there's that. Borrowing from the old masters is a great way to learn, and I've done that continuously. I said I almost went to work for Disney. This is a totem pole that I carved with my father that went to Disney World. This is at Epcot Center. And the night this went up, we got to wear these construction hats and vests, and my vest said Disney Imagineer on the back. So for about 3 hours, I was a Disney Imagineer. This is a more recent piece of mine. This is a bronze, the original, and the bronze house post that was raised in Juneau, Alaska, at the Alaska Heritage Institute. And a skateboard that, as I was painting it, I have to be honest, I thought to myself, who's going to buy this? I mean, are they going to use it? You know what I mean? But it did find a happy home, and again, I feel like I've reached a place with formline that the sky's the limit, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about what my plans about that are in just a moment. This is a totem pole that I carved this summer with my dear friend Clifton Guthrie in my village. It was raised in front of our children's mental health facility, and the entire totem pole talks about the foundation that we should be giving our children, from knowledge of where they come from, how we got to where we are, their family lineage, clan connections, the treasuring our land, and all of that is what will make them, and that's the 2 children at the top, and they're holding up our flag. That'll give them a good, strong future. I've even gotten to do some scarves with 8th Generation. I'm very proud to partner with that Native-owned company here in Seattle, and I've done some wool blankets and things like that. And one of the reasons that I'm talking about this, you'll see in a moment, is that my life has changed quite a bit in the last few years. Before I get to that, in 2015, my father and I partnered to create a house front for Sealaska Heritage Institute. If any of you ever go to Juneau, it's worth going to see. It's 40 feet wide, 16 feet high. In the center, it's made of 43 individual boards. It took us about 6 months. I'm very proud of this. And I'm very proud of all the work I've been able to do with my dad. So just before I move on, I want to say a big thank you. Could everybody please acknowledge my father? I've had the opportunity recently, just like him actually, to teach. I've been doing quite a bit of traveling with teaching formline classes through Sealaska Heritage Institute. This is a class that I gave in Sitka last year. I'll be going again this year. Matter of fact, on Tuesday I start teaching in Ketchikan for a week. I've gotten to the point and done it enough that I've noticed that there are no good how-to books on formline. There are obviously, there's the book, Analysis of Form, and I want to thank Bill Holm for giving us a vocabulary to talk about the art. All the words in my language for our art form are lost to time. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But I'm planning on writing a book. I've started it, and using these classes that I've been teaching, it'll be the foundations of the art form, all the rules to hopefully guide people from making bad habits. And the plan is to have the back end of the book full of the old pieces that I would suggest studying. So I'm working on that right now, and who knows when it'll be out, but I'm excited about it. I want to thank Robert. The 2 years I spent in his studio changed my life, and not only did I find a new perspective and a direction to go with how I approach the art, I got a friend out of it. So I'd like to, everyone, please acknowledge Robert. This is the village of Kitkatla. This is where some of my great-grandparents' families came from. In the 1800s, most Ts'msyen villages, 9 of them, moved to a place called Port Simpson, where a missionary came named William Duncan and converted many of our people. We built the village of Kitkatla at an old village site on a channel called Machlacha, which means a saltwater passage. And that's where the name Metlakatla comes from. Conflicts with the Canadian government and the Church of England made it so that we decided to leave and ask the United States government for permission to move to Alaska. This is a painting by another teacher of mine, Mr. Chris Hopkins, who taught me while I was in high school for 3 years when I was planning on being an illustrator. Many of the lessons he taught me I still use today, even though I don't practice that art form for my profession. But the best lesson he taught me was that you have to be a lifetime student. I think that's what made me think to go ask Robert if I could work for him. It's what made me continually want to learn. So, and Chris is here today. I'm really glad he's here. Thank you, Chris. Everybody give him a In order to go to Metlakatla, you had to sign a piece of paper that said you give up potlatching, going to medicine men, painting your face. Basically, the first 5 things said you won't practice your culture anymore. Duncan allowed us to continue to speak our language, and he preached and taught in his school bilingually. It wasn't until 1916 the government school came and took over the education in Canada that our children were then punished for speaking their language. That, combined with having to leave our homeland of 10,000 years and move to a new location, the upheaval of our way of life, caused something that is universal with indigenous peoples and minorities through something called historical trauma. This is something that I wouldn't necessarily have learned about, except that in 2015 I decided to move home to my village to learn my language. And in this process I've learned a lot about historical trauma. It's the actual reason for the substance abuse that is too famously connected with indigenous peoples. It's not because our bodies can't handle the alcohol, it's because we are a traumatized people. And that is a way of dealing with that trauma. That trauma is then passed down generation to generation. They're finding out now through something called epigenetics that it actually damages your DNA. Your body, you can't handle the level of trauma, and that's passed down. And then that trauma, generation after generation, is brought forth with other symptoms, physical abuse, mental abuse, all of these other things, and those traumas get passed down. So we are at a place where we are trying to move forward as modern day people while still healing from 150 years of being traumatized, which is not easy. One of the ways that is being proven now that can do that for us is heritage language reacquisition. When you can be proud of who you are, you're not going to hurt yourself or your families. And that's something that has been a real eye-opener for me in this work that I've been doing since I moved back to Metlakatla. This passion started with my father. I remember as a little boy singing with his songs and singing in Ts'msyen, hearing my great-grandfather. This is Chief Bossy Bolton, who we lost a couple of years ago, who was a teacher of ours. So I moved home and along with Gavin Hudson and Candy McGill, started the Height Foundation. It's a very, very small nonprofit. We're not yet 501c3. But our mission is to create new fluent speakers. We have hosted Founders Day events at home where we tell our history. We've traveled around to British Columbia to work with other fluent speakers. We've been acknowledged by the state of Alaska for our efforts. I talked about how the words for form line are gone. One thing we don't want to have that happen with is our baskets. Metlakatla has a unique style of basket weaving that was created after our move to Alaska. It borrows from Tlingit and Haida styles, but it's not like Ts'msyen style on the Canada side, so it's really our indigenous art form. And Candy, along with Dolores Churchill and her daughter Holly, Dolores had learned this style from our weavers back in the 70s. And we created a bilingual curriculum for how to make our style of basket weaving. It took a couple of years. We worked with the Smithsonian, and that's been published. It's online for free on our website. This is Candy's work now. It looks just like my great-grandmother's work. It's fantastic. She's got pieces in Stonington right now, actually. These are them. This is the bag on the right is one that she replicated just recently from the one on the left. And she even did this little one for my sister, who I added here because she just graduated from the University of North Carolina with her master's degree at just now 24 years old, so I'm very proud of her. Okay. I've had to find excuses to make sure that I keep working on my art for my own sanity. It's been very difficult for me to make art half-time and do language half-time. I never planned on being a language teacher. When I was working for Robert, it wasn't even an idea in my head. I was going to, after leaving his studio, I was going to go off and do this all the time. But this called me. I remember looking at a label in the gallery. It said David Robert Boxley, Ts'msyen. And it just dawned on me, what good is that if no one knows what Ts'msyen means? I couldn't shake that feeling. And that's what sent me home. This was a mask I did for an auction for a language fundraiser. That's the language coming out of the mouth. I've been working, I'm going to cry. last 4 years with this wonderful lady, Mrs. Sarah Booth. She is one of the last 3 fluent speakers in my community. There are only about 80 fluent speakers of my language in the world. She is wheelchair bound, but when we're home, she works with us 5 days a week. She is a saint. And everything I'm able to do with the language, at the level I'm doing it at, I'm this close to just being able to talk. And I owe that to her. My community is a beautiful place. These are photos by Tyrone Scott Hudson, a local photographer in the town. And it's my mission now to not only continue to try to be visible as an artist and make my living, because there is no money in language revitalization, I'll tell you that. But to make a future for my people where there are a bunch of little Ts'msyen kids who can speak their language. That's the plan. I do it for these guys. That's my great-grandfather, my dad, at that first potlatch. And I do it for our people. This is when our group led celebration a couple of years ago. None of it's easy, but I guess that's why it's worth doing. The last things I'm going to do here, I asked if I could, and I apologize for how used car salesman this is going to sound, but we're doing some fundraisers for language revitalization. We're planning a trip in conjunction with Tlingit Height Indian Tribes of Alaska and First Alaska Institute to send a cultural delegation to New Zealand. The Maori people have already saved their language. You can get an engineering degree in Maori. And we're going to go down and see what we can learn. So Candy and I have tickets. We don't really have a lot of change, so we're just going to have to buy a lot of tickets. There's an online fundraiser going on right now with this design I did for a shirt. The words say, the sun is rising on our language. And this is online right now. It's being sold all month. You can either find the link on our website or at customink.com. And any support is always welcome. As I said, there is no money in language revitalization. So I'm taking this opportunity to ask. I'm really honored to be here today, and I'm honored to have this opportunity. As I said, being away from this life, that being an artist is what I've always wanted to be. And if there were other people doing what we're trying to do for the language, maybe I'd be here a little more often. But I'm doing what I got to do. So thank you for your time here today. Thank you for supporting the gallery. Thank you for supporting us artists all the time. We look forward to dancing for you this afternoon. Thank you very much.